Columbus, Ohio, the middle of an NHL offseason that was supposed to be about optimism. A young core finally maturing, a franchise trying to convince its fan base that the rebuild was working. Instead, the biggest story out of Columbus this week has nothing to do with a prospect or a draft pick. It is about whether the best player on the team still wants to be there. Werenski is not just another defenseman. He is the face of this Blue Jackets roster, the guy the front office built everything around after years of losing seasons. For nearly a decade, he has been the steady presence on that blue line the player scouts pointed to whenever they talked about what this rebuild could actually become. So when reports started circulating that Columbus had shopped him in trade talks with the Dallas Stars, the hockey world paid attention immediately. According to insiders, the Stars floated a deal that would have sent Werenski to Dallas in exchange for defenseman Thomas Harley. It sounded like exactly the kind of blockbuster this league loves to obsess over in July, the type of move that reshapes two franchises overnight. But Werenski said no. He was unwilling to waive his no-movement clause, the contractual protection that gives a player final say over where he plays. That alone is not scandalous. Plenty of players use no-movement clauses to control their own careers, and turning down one offer does not automatically mean a player is unhappy. What made this different was the detail that followed. Multiple insiders reported that Werenski would prefer to be dealt to an Eastern Conference team if he is ever moved at all, with speculation pointing toward Tampa Bay or Toronto. That is not a player digging in to stay put. That sounds like a player quietly picking his next home while still wearing the current jersey. For a franchise still trying to convince its fans that better days are coming, that kind of speculation is dangerous. Columbus has already watched this movie before with other homegrown talents who eventually found their way out the door to bigger markets. So the Blue Jackets did what every front office does when a story gets away from them. They tried to control the message. General Manager Don Waddell and Werenski himself released matching statements through the team, aimed squarely at shutting down the trade chatter. On the surface, it read like a routine denial. Nothing to see here, business as usual. The defenseman is happy in Columbus. Except the statement did not actually say that. Here is what Waddell revealed, whether he meant to or not. Earlier in the spring, he and Werenski sat down and talked about his future with the organization beyond the current contract. And according to Waddell's own words, Werenski indicated that he was not sure what the future would hold, whether that meant staying with the club or possibly moving on. Sit with that for a second. The general manager, in the process of trying to kill a trade rumor, just confirmed on the record that his franchise player told him months ago he was uncertain about his long-term future in Columbus. That is not a denial. That is a confession dressed up as a denial. Think about how these statements usually work. A team wants to protect its assets' value, calm the fan base, and make a swirling story disappear overnight. The playbook is simple. Deny everything, insist the player is fully committed, move on to the next headline. Instead, Columbus handed reporters a direct quote, proving the uncertainty was real all along. Fans on message boards and social media picked apart the wording within minutes. Comment sections filled up fast, with some fans defending Werenski's right to be honest about an uncertain future and others accusing the front office of botching the entire rollout. If the goal was damage control, the damage got worse. Reporters who cover the team closely noted something else buried in the timeline. Werenski apparently gave the organization a heads up back in the spring, months before any of this became public. That means Columbus had significant lead time to plan around this possibility and chose instead to let it leak out through trade rumors first, then scramble to respond after the fact. That sequence alone raises uncomfortable questions about how well this front office actually controls information around its biggest asset. It also raises the obvious question of who actually leaked the story in the first place. If Werenski told Waddell privately back in spring that his future was uncertain, someone inside the organization or someone close to the negotiations with Dallas decided this was information the public needed to hear right now. Insiders in the hockey media world love pointing fingers at agents looking to create leverage, but plenty of front offices leak their own stories too, hoping to soften the blow before a bigger trade gets announced. Either way, the leak itself tells you the situation was far less stable behind the scenes than the eventual statement wanted anyone to believe. And this did not happen in a vacuum. It landed right in the middle of the most chaotic opening days of free agency in recent memory. Insider Elliot Friedman was already describing the start of this offseason as chaotic on camera. Star defensemen were rejecting trades left and right across the league. Dylan Larkin shocked Detroit with a trade demand of his own despite years left on his contract. Darnell Nurse was actually dealt out of Edmonton within hours of the market opening, with the Oilers scrambling to replace him before the ink was even dry. The entire league is in the middle of what analysts are calling an age of player empowerment, where stars are using every lever available to control where they play. Werenski's situation slots directly into that pattern, whether Columbus wants to admit it or not. If you are enjoying breakdowns like this one, make sure you are subscribed, because the Werenski situation is nowhere near finished, and we will be tracking every update as this story develops through the rest of the summer. So why does this actually matter beyond the awkward wording of a press release? Because Werenski still has 2 years remaining on his current contract. That means Columbus is not forced into anything immediately. They have time. But time is exactly the problem here. Every game, every losing streak, every moment of visible frustration on the bench is now going to get read through this lens. Is Werenski committed, or is he just waiting out the clock until his contract allows him to walk or force a move? The team just handed every reporter in the league a permission slip to ask that question all season long, and they will absolutely use it. There is also the trust problem this creates with the fan base. Blue Jackets supporters have already lived through years of rebuilding promises. They watched other homegrown stars leave for bigger markets and brighter contenders, and each time they were told the next core would be different. The next group would stay and finish what they started. Now their franchise defenseman, the one player the entire rebuild was supposedly built around, has been publicly confirmed by his own general manager to have doubts about his future. That is a gut punch for a fan base that has been asked to be patient for a very long time already, with very little to show for it beyond a handful of promising young pieces. Compare this to how other franchises have handled similar situations in recent years. When a star player's future gets called into question, the smartest organizations get ahead of it early, either locking the player into a long-term extension well before doubts can spread publicly, or making a clean trade before speculation ever reaches the media. Columbus did neither. They let the uncertainty sit for months, let the Dallas talks leak out first, and only then issued a statement that ended up confirming the very thing they wanted buried. That is not how you build trust with a star player who already has options. What happens next depends heavily on how Columbus performs. If the Blue Jackets come out of the gate strong and look like a real playoff contender, this entire story quietly fades into background noise. Werenski stays, the fan base exhales, and everyone moves on to the next controversy somewhere else in the league. But if the losing continues, if the atmosphere around the team stays tense, expect this exact statement to resurface every single time trade rumors pick back up. Reporters do not forget quotes like this one. They save them for exactly this kind of moment, ready to pull them back out the second the losing streak hits and the pressure builds again. There is also the Eastern Conference detail that nobody in Columbus wants to talk about publicly. If Werenski truly prefers a move east, that narrows the list of realistic trade partners significantly, and it tells you something about where his head might already be, even while he is technically still a Blue Jacket. Teams like Tampa Bay and Toronto do not need to say a word right now. They can simply wait, watch how this season unfolds, and be ready to circle back the moment Columbus shows any willingness to listen. For now, the Blue Jackets are stuck defending a statement that did the opposite of what it was designed to do. Instead of closing the door on speculation, Don Waddell cracked it wide open and let everyone see exactly what has been happening behind closed doors since spring. Zach Werenski is still a Blue Jacket today. Whether he still wants to be one a year from now is a question this franchise just made a whole lot harder to answer with confidence. One thing is certain. In a league where player empowerment is rewriting the rules of loyalty in real time, the teams that survive this era are not the ones with the best public relations. They are the ones that give their stars a real reason to stay. Columbus just found out the hard way that a statement cannot fix a problem that started months before anyone hit record.